Thank you so much for having us. This is the Twitter for Podcasters workshop. I'm Danielle Quigley, and I work on our People and Partner Experience team. I work to put together trainings and workshops just like this one across our publisher audience. So whether it's an athlete, a journalist, a social media manager who works for a TV network or record label, I'm putting together content like this so that publishers can make the most of Twitter. And I'll turn it over to Rachel.
Thanks, Danielle. Hi, everyone. I'm Rachel Koppes. My pronouns are she, her. I work on our creator partnerships team at Twitter. And I always say that the best way to describe what we do is we help creators live their best lives on the platform, whatever that means for them.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel. So I'll quickly go over the agenda for what we'll be covering in this session. So if there's anyone in the audience who just created a Twitter account, I'll quickly go over some basics. Next, I'll talk about how to market your podcast, and then I'll talk about some strategies for finding and growing your audience. Then Rachel will cover some monetization options with Twitter, and then she'll talk about some product updates. And at the end of the session, we'll have Q&A, as Michelle mentioned. One thing I did want to note is that we have a lot of resources available for you for after this session. I've included a lot of Help Center articles that will be helpful. And then we have our Twitter media site, which is a resource for publishers to find product updates and best practices. If you scan the QR code in the lower left-hand corner of the screen, it actually directs you to this Twitter for Podcasters page we stood up specifically for this audience. Twitter is what's happening and what people are talking about right now. Whether it's K-pop, March Madness, the SAG Awards, all those conversations are taking place on Twitter. And we know that people are talking about podcasts on Twitter as well. We're really excited to bring this workshop to you all today because we want to provide you with lots of tips and tricks so that you can make the most of Twitter and join and jumpstart these conversations. I wanted to quickly share why I'm personally invested in podcasting and you as an audience. I listen to podcasts every single day, whether it's history, business advice, true crime, definitely. I'm always tuning in. I wanted to throw it back to 2014 with this tweet where Serial launched their show on Twitter. So neat to see kind of where, my start with podcasting happened. So if you're new to Twitter, just created an account, welcome. I hope this presentation is super helpful for you and you'll see a lot of the ins and outs. So if this is all very new to you, a tweet, in terms of what that is, I wanted to share a little definition from Merriam-Webster. So first off, it's a chirping note. And second, more applicable to us, is it's a post made on Twitter, the online messaging service. Tweets can include text only or a bunch more options, which I'll go over. And fun fact, we just relaunched our brand in January, and the font you see that we use and throughout this whole presentation is actually called Chirp. So as I mentioned, there's lots of bells and whistles you can add to a tweet aside from text itself. First up, we have an experiment with including an audio recording. Rachel will go into this a lot more in depth later, so I'll save that for her. Next, you can add 1 to 4 images to a tweet. And while I'm talking about images, I just wanted to share that you can set image descriptions to make them more accessible. And to do that, you tap this Alt button. And next, you can read a bit more about descriptions and tap Sure. And then from here, you can type in a description of your image up to 1,000 characters. And also you can add video to your tweets. So that could be pre-recorded or you can go live right from the Twitter app. You can add a GIF to a tweet. This is super handy if you don't know what quite words to use, but if you want to use like a funny reaction or a GIF that's out there that kind of best encompasses how you feel about something. And last, you can add a poll to a tweet. You can include 2 to 4 options and you can set the time limit for as long as you want. Great. And so next up, I want to talk about customizing your profile. Your profile is your first impression. And so I definitely think whether you're a new person on Twitter or somebody who's at an account for a while, it's definitely worth investing some time and effort into what your profile looks like. And there's a few different ways you can do that with a bunch of different options that you can make your own. And one thing I'll note is I know that a lot of people tweet on behalf of organizations or shows themselves, or even if you're a host. So I definitely would think about how you're setting up your profile to best fit those content needs. So first is the header photo. You should see this as your personal billboard. If you're an organization, it's a great place to put the cover photos of each of your shows. Or if you're a single podcast, you could include your logo or a behind the scenes picture. Next up is your profile photo. So this image here comes along with every single tweet that you create. So I definitely would be aware of what you're including as your profile photo. If you're a person, you could do your headshot, or you could do a logo for your organization or your show. Next is your display name. So display name is something you can update and have a little bit of fun with. One example I actually saw just this morning, How I Built This. I had in their display name something along the lines of How I Built This is doing a fellowship program. I know one thing we saw when people attend conferences is they'd say like Danielle is at South by Southwest. This is just a fun way you can keep things up to date. One thing I will share is that once you do have a handle, I would not recommend updating that. If you're verified, you will have to reapply for verification if you change your handle. And next up is your bio. So this is a great opportunity to provide a description of what your profile will be about. You can tell your followers what they can expect from you. You can describe your show or what organization you're a part of. It's just a great little place that you can customize and keep up to date. And for your website, this is a place where you could put a listen link, your show or organization's website. And location. So I would definitely be thoughtful with what you put here. I wouldn't recommend putting your personal location, but if, let's say, your show takes place in a specific city or spot, you could have that location there just to really put in like that main idea of where your show takes place. And last is the pinned tweet. So when you pin a tweet, it sticks to the top of your profile. And so this is a great place to put a tweet that's one of your most successful. Let's say one really took off in terms of likes or engagements, or if you have a tweet that launches your show, this is a great place to put that. I wanted to highlight this awesome example from NPR, It's Been a Minute. You'll see that they have a header picture that includes both the organization and the show's logo. In the profile photo, they have the logo. In the bio, they've mentioned NPR and the reporter's name, and you can see how it's that blue color, meaning that if somebody can actually click that and go onto those other profiles. And then one thing I've noticed is that they have this pinned tweet talking about the new episode. And I did check in on that pinned tweet yesterday and it was updated. So one thing that looks like they're doing that's great is they're updating that pinned tweet potentially week over week to highlight when the new episode is available. So now that we've talked about your profile and the tweets themselves, I wanted to talk about a few ideas for how to best market your podcast on Twitter. So I wanted to talk about hashtags, mainly because I think it's important if you are tweeting about a show that you have one show or one hashtag that you use consistently. The benefit there is it's a great way to organize conversation and provide a way for people to join into that conversation themselves. When somebody clicks on the hashtag for the tweet, they could see all the tweets that use that hashtag. So here are a couple pointers. First, make it easy to remember and spell. I definitely would suggest having your show name be your hashtag, but let's say it's a one word like water, you could say something like water the show or NPR's water, something of that sort. Next, I recommend searching how the podcast or how the hashtag is already being used. You want to make sure that you're using something original and that you can kind of unify this conversation in a new way. Next, be realistic about what people will use. So one thing I suggest is that you don't have one that's too long. You want it to be quick and easy to participate with. And a couple don'ts. So don't use all lowercase letters. This is for screen reader reasons. You want to make sure that a screen reader can pick up on each word within the hashtag. So as an example, if you're Nike and your slogan is just do it, you would do capital J, capital D, capital I. And in the same regard, you don't want to use all cap locks unless it is an acronym. And last, don't over hashtag your content. I would say one hashtag per tweet is plenty, but if you have one that's specific for a holiday or your organization, you could put 2 in there as well. And next, I'll just show you a few examples of some great tweets. So in this first one, this account is including the hashtag for the show. They mention the host and they include a listen link. In this next example, I would definitely suggest that you encourage hosts to tweet about their shows. What I love about this example is that both hosts are tweeting and they tweeted different content. So one has a behind the scenes picture where one actually has the cover image, so that people know what to look out for when they're trying to find your show. And when that first episode does drop, definitely make sure fans are aware. In this example, there's a listen link as well as the hashtag. And also alert fans when a new episode drops. You can see in both these cases, they include listen links and they're letting people know that a new episode is out and available for them to listen to. And quote tweeting is a great way to provide additional information. So a retweet is when you take somebody's tweet who isn't yours and you share it on their behalf to all your followers. And a quote tweet essentially does a very similar thing, except you can put your opinion or some additional information on top, like in this example here. And when you do have a guest on your show, make sure that you're including them in that announcement tweet. So what's great about both of these examples is that they're specifically mentioning the guests who are participating in the show. And what happens is, depending on somebody's notification settings, they would be aware that you tweeted mentioning their handle. And the hope would be that they would also retweet that content to push your tweet that much further. And if you work at a network, or let's say you have a friend or colleague who has their own podcast, I definitely would suggest that you cross promote each other's shows. So in this instance, Up and Vanished has tweeted about Culpable. They both have their own followers, but when they're tweeting about each other, they're just expanding that audience that much further. And if you are participating in a virtual event, I would definitely encourage you to tell your listeners that you're doing that. Encourage signups and let them know where you're speaking outside of your show. And last for this section, I wanted to talk about moments. Moments are a collection of tweets that you can curate and put together in the order of your choosing. A moment can also include tweets that are your own or somebody else's. And so a moment is a great way to kind of build that collection and tell a further story with a bunch of tweets. Within the follow-up materials, we have how-to instructions for how to create a moment. But one idea I wanted to share with you all today is if you are tweeting week over week about your show, I would suggest at the end of the season, you make a moment that collects all those tweets. And then let's say you have season 2 of your show approaching later in time, you could tweet that moment a week in advance so that people could listen in to the show if they're a new listener to catch up on season 1, or do a recap so that they're prepared for season 2. And next, I wanted to talk about finding and growing your audience. Now that you learned all these strategies, you're going to have all these great tweets. What are some ways to make sure that people can see them? So a couple strategies. One, tweet consistently. So I definitely would suggest that you tweet at least once a week. I know that tweeting daily can feel a little bit daunting at first. Definitely when a new episode comes out, I think that's certainly tweet worthy. And as a future goal, I would aim to tweet at least 3 to 4 times a week. Next, participate in a trending topic, whether it's a holiday or an award show like the AMBs, or a weekly reoccurring hashtag like Motivation Monday or Friday Feeling. These are all great trends that you could participate in. And the benefit of participating in a trend is that when somebody taps into it, they're seeing tweets that use those hashtags, even if they don't follow you. So it's just another chance for more people to see your tweets and hopefully follow along. And next, interact with people on Twitter. So it's great if you retweet your fans, and even if you don't fully want to have their tweets on your own profile, you can simply like those tweets. It truly goes a long way, and fans love it when the hosts or their favorite shows are liking their tweets. It really shows that you're paying attention and that you appreciate them. And if you are comfortable and do have time, I would suggest that you reply and quote tweet to those fans, hosts, guests, or industry accounts. This is another way to signify that you're paying attention and to just really generate some buzz around your show. And last, I would definitely suggest that you talk up your Twitter presence on other channels. So as an example, in your email signature, you could include a link to your Twitter account or even in your website. So some things to think about to help make sure that people are aware of your handle. And I just wanted to show a couple examples of some great ways people are jumpstarting conversations with their accounts. So I love these playful examples here, just to really talk out the benefits of this. So let's say I follow the person Foxy who responded, but I don't follow Parcast Network yet. What's great about this, where Parcast Network is tweeting and really prompting a conversation, is that since I follow Foxy, I could see that tweet in my timeline and then further see the Parcast tweet, and then hopefully in turn follow. Next up is sharing gratitude with people. You know, the Ambies are coming up soon. I know a lot of people are nominated, and a great way to kind of join that conversation is just to thank the listeners who helped. So this is a fun and easy way just to show appreciation back to your fan base. And last, you can use Twitter as a source for your stories. Whether you're asking people in replies to give you information or to send a voice memo, Twitter is a great way or a great place to put that open question out there so that people know and can start participating and potentially contribute to your stories. So that's it for me. I'm going to turn it over to Rachel now to talk about monetization.
Awesome. Thanks, Danielle. I love all of those case study examples. I think it's really inspiring. I always feel like I learned something in these sessions too. So I'm excited to talk to all of you about monetization. I think this is the part of the presentation where everyone's ears perk up a little bit, people get excited. So just going to share some of the current ways creators and publishers can monetize on Twitter, as well as some future things in the works that we're excited to tell you about. So the first product is Amplify Pre-roll, which is our program that pairs advertisers with creators and publishers. We've seen podcasters find success in this program by monetizing teaser trailers, snippets of your podcast, behind the scenes videos, just anything that really kind of takes the engagement with your audience to the next level. The way that it works is once you're a part of the Amplify Pre-roll program, you'll actually be matched with an advertiser and their pre-roll will run against those videos. There are some eligibility requirements that we would, of course, be happy to discuss with you, but just at a baseline, you do need to be verified. And we typically recommend that you are generating about 1 million organic video views per month on your own. So for some creators, they're posting 1 video a week, and each of those videos is seeing about 250,000 organic video views. And the reason that we recommend that viewership level is just so you can see meaningful returns from being part of the program, and then it's worth the time spent. If you are interested in learning more, I know Michelle shared our alias, but you can totally reach out to creators@twitter.com and would be happy to discuss the Amplify with you. Review is a new integration with Twitter that I personally am very excited about. They joined us via an acquisition in January. Review is sort of enabling us to pay non-video creators in a really interesting way, and I'm very excited about that. You know, when 280 characters aren't enough and you need to push your audience toward longer form content, or if you currently have a free newsletter that you are pushing out to your fans, it's really easy to make the transition into the review technology. And then it lives within your the Twitter ecosystem, if you will. We are still working on onboarding the review team into Twitter. So still finalizing all of the eligibility requirements for creators, especially as it relates to monetizable newsletters. But if you are interested in learning more about review, you can send a DM to this handle that's on the screen. Michael, the partner manager, has graciously given us permission to send his handle out into the world. I know he's very excited about hearing from some of you. So please feel free to reach out to Michael directly via DM if you're interested in learning more about review. Coming down the pike within the next couple of months is Super Follows. I think this is going to be really exciting for Twitter. This is our interpretation of a subscription model. And what's really great about this from my perspective is it enables you to get paid directly from the fans that care about you the most. So rather than trying to fit the constraints of a brand deal or being held to strict brand safety guidelines, the people that are paying you, you already know they care about what you have to say and they're huge fans of yours. So we also are still working through all of the requirements for this, and there will definitely be more to come. We can keep Michelle looped in on that as well, so she can share that information with all of you. But just an exciting time to be a creator and publisher on Twitter. We're rolling out a ton of great new monetization options, so very exciting. Before we get to the Q&A portion, on the topic of exciting things rolling out for creators and publishers on the platform, I'm sure you've all noticed the product and engineering team over here has been quite busy over the past year. It feels like we are constantly rolling out something new. So just wanted to recap everything that's rolled out that we think should be top of mind for you, just so you can start getting familiar with these new products and ask questions. So the first one is conversation settings. Not sure if you've seen this before, but this was actually born out of our safety team as a tool to help people feel like they can be more comfortable on Twitter and control who can actually reply to them. So within the conversation settings feature, you can set it so only people you follow can reply to you, only people that you mention can reply to you, or everyone can reply. Beyond the safety implications of this tool, I think, we've seen some really creative use cases of conversation settings. It's a great way to have like a high profile conversation in public that's easy for your fans to follow. Oftentimes, if there's a dialogue happening between, let's say it's you and a guest on your podcast that's really noteworthy, sometimes the replies can very quickly break a thread, with your fans and audience being really excited to chime into the conversation. With conversation settings, you can actually control that back and forth dialogue, so there's more clarity and the conversation is easier to follow. I also really like conversation settings as kind of a lower lift than a really premium produced video Q&A. It's a really easy way to facilitate sort of an interview format or a panel discussion. So definitely something worth trying and easy to do today. This is just a really great example from Teen Vogue of how they've leveraged conversation settings to actually have their interview conversations in public, which is also a really fun way to engage with your fans. Lists. I get really excited talking about lists because lists are one of my favorite Twitter products. I always say if you're having a bad time on Twitter, you're probably not using lists. It really enables you to create a very custom Twitter experience based on who you care about and based on your interests. So within lists, you can actually create essentially a custom Twitter timeline. So whether that's a list of your colleagues in the industry, I know a lot of creators that will create lists of friends and family, people whose tweets they actually really want to see and be able to engage with. And you can pin up to 5 lists to your timeline experience, which I think is really great. And I'm going to walk you through how to do that really briefly. So to pin a list to your timeline, in the top menu, you just tap your profile icon and then tap lists. Then you click the pin icon, which will add a list to your home timeline experience. Then, of course, you can change the order of the lists. You can tap edit to change the order, or you can tap and hold that toggle to shift. And then tap the back button to go back to your home timeline. And then the lists are now at the top of your timeline. So you can see in this example from Danielle, she has her home timeline, which is everyone she follows, but then she has her more curated timelines focused on the things that she's specifically interested in, like typography and design. And the way you access those is you can just swipe to go between the different timeline experiences. Another great product for customizing and really enhancing your Twitter experience is Topics. I think it's ideal scenario is you're using both lists and topics to curate the type of tweets that are being surfaced to you. One of the great things about Topics is you don't actually have to spend the time following every individual person who is relevant to a certain topic. So if you know you're interested in podcast and radio, for example, if you follow the podcast and radio topic, relevant tweets will be surfaced within your timeline experience and then tagged as being part of that topic. So you're not like, why am I seeing this random tweet from this person that I don't follow? Topics are also constantly being updated and improved upon. So adding new voices into the topic, adding new topics to follow, that sort of thing. This QR code on the screen, if you scan that, will actually take you to the podcast and radio topic, so you can give that a follow. And yeah, just following a topic definitely helps you to stay informed on what's relevant within that certain space without having to do the legwork on your own of finding all the relevant accounts to follow. The how-to for following a topic. So in the top menu, similar to how you access lists, tap your profile icon, then tap topics, which is just on that sidebar. If you are already following any topics, they will appear there. And then there's also suggested topics that, as I mentioned, are constantly being updated and improved upon. So, you know, let's say today you go in and play around with topics and don't think you want to follow the nature topic. Well, you can always change your mind and come back and revisit it in a few weeks, and maybe it's even better. You can then tap more topics and search for topics to follow. Once you follow a topic, you'll start seeing the associated tweets in your timeline. And of course, you can unfollow a topic at any time as well. This QR code will take you to this experience where you can search for and follow topics to add to your Twitter experience. Lots of fun stuff. Fleets is one of the new darlings on the scene from our Twitter product team. Of course, Twitter had to get some skin in the ephemeral content game. You know, we can't be the last ones. Fleets allow you to share a fleeting thought. So similar to the story experience that you've seen on other platforms, after 24 hours, they will disappear. So it's a great way to share, you know, things that maybe would typically live in your drafts, behind the scenes content, something that you wouldn't necessarily want to live on your timeline forever. I really like Fleets for sharing fan tweets. So if you have really leaned in audience who is constantly tweeting about your podcast or tweeting at you, you can always show them some love by sharing their tweet to your Fleet. And I'll show you how to do that in a couple of slides. But then that way you don't have to clog up your home timeline with retweeting a bunch of fan tweets and replies. Instead, you can share it to your Fleet. It can live for 24 hours. They can feel special. And then your timeline can stay curated. To create a Fleet, Fleets appear above the home timeline. I always call this the Fleet line. I don't know if that's like the technical term, but that's what works for my brain. To create a new Fleet, you just tap that little plus sign on your profile image, or if you already have a Fleet posted, you just tap your profile image. Then you compose your Fleet. So you can either capture a photo or video, or you can upload from your camera roll. You can overlay text, you can overlay GIFs. We have some other fun things in the works. I can't say what they are, but you can probably use your imagination. And then you just tap the Fleet button to post the Fleet to your profile. Similar to what Danielle mentioned around adding alt text to photos, you can also add alt text to your Fleets, which just makes it more accessible to your audience. And the way that you do that is you click that alt button in the bottom right, and then you can add an image description. As I mentioned, fleeting a tweet. This is just a really nice way to engage with whether it is your fans or show love to other podcasts, or just take that engagement to the next level. If you want to fleet a tweet, I'm like, let me not get my tongue tied saying all this. You just tap the share icon on the tweet, select share in a Fleet. Then you can, add your commentary, add a reaction, resize it, rotate it, whatever you'd like, and then post the fleet. Similarly, you can also tweet a fleet. So if you have an amazing fleet and you decide, you know what, I actually want this to live on my timeline forever, I changed my mind, you can go into the fleet and click tweet this, and then, you know, add your copy and all of that fun stuff. All right, so the last two products that I'm excited to share with all of you, knowing that your voice is your primary medium and something that you're very comfortable using. Twitter Voice is the voice audio tweets that Danielle had mentioned earlier. You can actually record an audio message and then tweet it out. It can be up to 140 seconds in length, which is easy to remember, you know, the olden days of 140 characters. One of my personal favorite elements of our audio products is that you can actually continue through the Twitter experience and still listen to the recording. So as you can see on this slide, on the far right example, this person who is viewing this tweet with the audio message has left the tweet itself and is scrolling the timeline, but the audio message is still playing. So I think that's a really nice feature. You don't have to be committed to like staying on that tweet experience. This is a good way for you to share kind of like behind the scenes content or little snippets of your podcast, little snippets of conversations. If you have someone who has a really unique voice or a really funny laugh or something that's like sort of a trademark or hallmark associated with them, we've also seen creators like that have a lot of fun with this product as well. And then the last piece is Spaces. So this is Twitter's interpretation of audio rooms. Within the Spaces experience, you know, we have created the opportunity for people to have conversations about the things that they care about in a closed setting, but anyone can join. So if they follow you on Twitter or not, if they get shared the link to your space or they find you by someone that they follow being a part of your space as a speaker, this is really nice for discoverability. It helps you to engage with and reach potential new audiences. Also within the Spaces experience, we do have transcriptions available. If you love closed captions like I do, makes it a little bit easier to follow the conversation. Spaces, fingers crossed, Tech World Classic should be rolling out in the next couple of weeks to the general public. But if you're super interested in trying Spaces and you don't already have access, you are more than welcome to reach out to the creators alias that Michelle shared, and happy to have a conversation with you about how to get access to that. Within the Spaces experience, the moderation controls are still being updated. Like, for example, we are hopefully going to be adding the functionality to have a second admin, which I think will be really great. It will allow you to really focus on controlling the conversation and assigning someone else the role of allowing people to speak, removing people as speakers, addressing when someone's hand is raised, all of that fun stuff. But for now, as an admin, you do have the ability to accept, add, and remove speakers, as well as remove participants. Anyone who is listening to the space can also block people who they feel are not contributing to a healthy conversation in the space, or report the space itself as being in violation of the Twitter rules. Just a little bit more detail on sort of what all of these little things mean within the admin view. You can tell when someone is a speaker because they have that little purple audio. You all know what that's called, and I don't know the correct terminology, little thing. People can emoji react even if they're not a speaker. So oftentimes when listeners agree with a point that's being made, we see that 100 emoji popping up quite a bit. There's also a peace sign, there's a wave. I think it's really cute to be able to say hello to people that are in the space when they join. Anyone can request to speak. And as an admin, you will see when someone has requested, but with that little blue dot. Just because someone has requested to speak doesn't mean you have to give them access. So you fully have control over that. You can also share the link to a space via that little bottom right arrow. It'll then show up on your Twitter timeline. And then transcriptions, like I mentioned, are also always available within the Spaces experience itself. Looking ahead, I'm really excited about communities. This is something that we're looking to launch this year. Fingers crossed again. I think this is sort of the next level of that really custom Twitter experience. It's kind of like if topics and lists grew and became even better, it would become communities. So communities will be a space where you can connect with like-minded individuals who are interested in having more in-depth conversations about the things that you care about. And I think what's really interesting about communities is you will be able to have that dialogue and share in sort of a tweet format that feels familiar, but those tweets will not live on your home timeline unless you want them to. But you can just kind of keep that conversation closed and within your community. So I'm very excited about that, and we'll definitely keep all of you posted as that comes to life. All right, I think that's enough from us. We would love to answer any questions that you have to the best of our ability. I think probably we'll take a second just to look at the questions that have come through.
We do have 4 questions for you in the chat box. I think you may have covered one of them, but the others look good for you. Do you see them?
Yes.
Great.
So for the first question, could you tell us about Twitter audio spaces and how to be a part of the beta test, how to use it for live conversations to boost podcast promotion? So if you would like to be part of the beta test, definitely feel free to email us, creators@twitter.com. With that said, it should be rolling out relatively soon. So if you aren't able to be a part of the beta test, you should still receive access within the next few weeks. How to use it for live conversations to boost podcast promo. From my perspective, I think it's really nice. And whoever this person is, it says anonymous attendee. I can also share this with you over email. It's nice to promote the space ahead of time. And we do have a template for that we can provide where you can sort of tweet out that tune in reminder, also making sure to tag the people that you're planning on inviting into the space with you so they can also amplify that message and encourage their audiences to join as well. That would probably be my recommendation for that.
Awesome. I can take the next question. How do you find trending hashtags? So the way to find a trending hashtag is, well, it depends on if you're on desktop or if you're on the app. If you're on the Twitter app, you click, I believe it's a little magnifying glass at the bottom of the, when you're looking at your phone, and you can see what the trends are. They're in bold. So that's one way that you can see what's currently trending. If you want to know trends about specific subjects, I'd honestly I would Google popular audio or podcasting hashtags or weekly reoccurring hashtags. I don't know the specific audio industry ones on the top of my head, but I'm sure that there will be articles about them. I don't know if this is more so just for listening to music or if it's everything in audio, but I know that hashtag now listening is pretty popular. I've seen that on there a bunch. And then how are moments different from tweet threads? So great question. So a tweet thread, for those of you in the audience who don't know what a thread is, it's essentially a long string of tweets. It's when you keep replying to that original tweet. And whereas a moment is different because truthfully, it's a little bit more built out. It has its own experience. So I believe you can edit the header image at the top of a moment, and you can add a description. And then different to a thread, for a moment, you can add tweets that aren't your own. So let's say in the case that you wanted to create a moment all about season 1 of your podcast, you could actually include when fans tweeted about your show or when guests tweeted about your show or different organizations. So a moment is just a way that you can pull tweets, not just from your own account, but from various accounts to tell a broader story. And then for the last one, I'm using the latest version of Twitter iOS app, but I don't see the ability to send a voice tweet. Rachel, I think that's actually still an experiment at the moment. Is that correct for voice?
I think it is, but I can confirm, Eric, if you want to put your email in the chat, I can confirm and email you. And potentially get you access if you want to try it out.
Or could he email creators at Twitter?
Or email me, either way.
Cool. Awesome. Let's see. Okay, cool. Awesome. Michelle, I don't know if there's any more questions.
That was it for questions. We'll give people a minute or so to see if they have any other questions, but I just want to say thank you. This was really valuable information. I certainly learned a lot. And just to remind everyone, you can now vote for the Ambies. We do have some upcoming webinars coming in April, one with the team from On Being at the intersection of art and audio. And then we have an Ask Me Anything. This is where some of the board members actually get together and you can ask them anything. So Donald Albright from Tenderfoot TV and Carrie Hoffman will be among those who are joining us on the 21st. That's an open webinar, so feel free to invite people in the industry who might not be members. And there's lots of more good stuff coming from the Podcast Academy. Thank you both so much. Oh, we have one more question come in. Always give people time. Great. Ladies want to take that?
Rachel, I can start, and then if you have other ideas.
Yeah.
So somebody asked, are there any tips you can give for types of questions to propose to get engagement or call to actions? We ask questions to our followers, but don't get a lot of responses for our platform. So that's interesting. I think I'd be curious actually to take a look at your handle and those tweets. But in terms of types of questions, so I think that there's ones that can be really specific to what you're tweeting about. And then I think that there's ones that kind of just prompt a lot of conversation. I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head, more general ones. Do you mind popping in the box what your show is about? Because that might help me be a little bit more brainstormy to give an idea.
I will add quickly, I do think CTAs are really hard. And I think getting your audience in the habit of replying to you sometimes requires you to start replying to them first. So, starting to spark conversation or just having some of that like back and forth dialogue with the people that you're interested in connecting with or people that follow you, to get them used to having conversations with you may then allow them to be a bit more comfortable replying to a broader CTA. I think it can be intimidating. Like, a lot of normal people on Twitter use Twitter just to read and listen. And get nervous about contributing to the conversation or thinking that they don't really have anything to say. So I think, if you start replying to people's tweets, that may be a good entry point, and then they'll get used to having that dialogue with you.
Yeah, I just thought of something too. I'm not sure how playful you feel comfortable getting with your handle, but one thing I've seen success with is actually asking people to reply with a GIF instead of a reply. So yeah, saying like, what did you think of the first episode? Reply with your GIF reaction. It's instead of somebody who might get a little nervous to tweet having to sit there and really think about it, they can just like look at all of our GIFs and be able to easily respond. So again, not sure how playful your account specifically is, but I think prompting to reply with a GIF is a great way for people to really easily participate without kind of overthinking and getting nervous about responding. And next question, can you explain how to get a good response for polls? So I would think about how a poll could play into a trending hashtag, but I know that that's not always applicable. And I would also take an idea from Rachel's Fleet section, where I would actually fleet that tweet with the poll in it so that people see it at the top of their fleet line, and then they can tap in and vote. So those are two ways I would do that. Also, if you have people who you think the poll would be relevant to, like, I don't know if you tweet on behalf of a show and you could ask your host to retweet that tweet. Anytime you can get people who are applicable to that tweet to kind of push it that much further with either a retweet or a quote tweet, I think is a great idea. Awesome. Next question. And I'm just reading them now, so it'll take a moment. So, Rachel, I'd love your thoughts on this once a day question.
Yeah.
I personally think that tweeting once a day is not too much. If you were asking about tweeting once an hour, unless you're like a reporter tweeting about breaking news, like I don't think once a day is too much at all. Especially,
I totally agree.
yeah, definitely. And then
I also, one thing I would add to that, I think you have to assume people aren't really looking at your profile that often. They're seeing tweets from you in the timeline, which moves so fast that if you're tweeting more than once a day, honestly, the chances of someone seeing both of them are sort of low, unless they don't happen to follow a lot of people. So I think that fear is valid, but I don't think that you will be spamming your audience. It's a different story if you're tweeting about the same thing all day. Ideally you would be sharing sort of like, maybe it's something about your episode, maybe it's something about the industry, maybe it's commenting on something that's happening. I'm making it up. These are not good examples, but I think as long as it's not, every few hours you're tweeting a link to the episode, it's fine. I also think it's worth practicing and just seeing how your engagement changes, and then sort of creating your own benchmark and going from there. Definitely requires some trial and error.
Yeah, that's a great point, Rachel. I love that idea of like coming up with an overarching strategy and then maybe doing a little bit of A/B testing to see what works for you. Like, does tweeting first thing in the morning or later in the day, different days of the week, just to kind of see what your audience responds to. And another question, how to best apply a hashtag to generate followers. I talked about this a little bit with trending topics, but I'll definitely reiterate a way to get more exposure for your account is to be participating in conversations that people will see outside of your initial follower base. So doing a little bit of research to see what the popular hashtags are within the audio industry, I think is a great starting point. We have an article about reoccurring weekly hashtags on help.twitter.com. I believe it's in the resources I sent Michelle, but that talks about some of the hashtags for every day of the week. And then like another idea, I know the Ambies is coming up and Michelle had mentioned that hashtag Ambies is going to be the hashtag for that award show. So participating in that conversation too, I think is a really relevant first start at, we've talked about this notion of live tweeting for a bunch of years now, where when there's an event happening in real time, being a part of that conversation, I think is always helpful because when people are searching that hashtag or searching or like looking at all the tweets about that event, they're seeing everyone, not just those who they follow. So whether it's, March Madness happening right now, if you have a sports podcast, I think participating in things like that. If you have a true crime podcast, maybe there's like a big documentary that's going to be on TV that's like semi-relevant to your show. Like anytime that you're not just tweeting about yourself, but just participating in other conversations is always great too. Awesome. Those are some great questions that came in. I'm glad we gave it a little bit more time.
That's right. People are shy at first, but and we will be using hashtag the Ambies. I noticed from your information, we should capitalize the and capitalize Ambies.
Yes, definitely.
All right. Well, if there are no more questions, we will say thank you and farewell to our experts, Rachel and Danielle, who have given us so much great information. This webinar was recorded and it will be up on the site in the member area later this week. Thanks for coming.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.